We are hearing a lot about the Department of Justice these days, mostly from politicians running for office, many unhappy with the FBI or the discovery of classified documents at former President Donald Trump's Florida estate. But here at home, the Justice Department's top man is not focused on any of that. Nicholas Karist is settling into his new job as United States Attorney, the top federal prosecutor for the District of Vermont, this morning appearing for his first television interview. Nicholas Karist, United States Attorney. Welcome to NBC5 In Depth.
Good morning. Thanks, Stuart, for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. I guess they call you Colo in the office. We'll get that out of the way. Does that have a special story?
Not really. My parents named me that way, named me Nicholas, and Colo was short for Nicholas. Not a great story behind it, but that's what people call me.
Well, congratulations. This is your first time in since your confirmation by the U.S. Senate to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Vermont. Now, 9 months into the job, what has surprised you most as the Chief Federal Prosecutor?
Well, Stuart, it's an honor and a privilege to have this job. It's a wonderful job. I work in an office full of extremely dedicated public servants. It's great to go to work every day. What surprised me the most probably is in my old job in the U.S. Attorney's Office as a line prosecutor and in the civil division before that, I was used to coming in every day and doing casework and moving cases forward and trying to do my best on my case docket. Now, I don't get to do that every day, which is challenging for me, but I get to be involved with other people's work, know what's going on, and try to promote their work and facilitate their success. So that's a big change from working on my specific caseload to thinking more broadly about everybody's work.
You supervise a staff of how many?
The office has about approximately 50 employees. There's about 20 lawyers, and the rest are non-lawyers who support the mission of the U.S. Attorney's Office.
You are nominated by the President of the United States, and I want to ask you the same question I've asked some of your predecessors. Have you ever spoken with President Biden?
No, I haven't.
What about Attorney General Garland?
I've met Attorney General Garland briefly. I haven't had any extensive conversations with him.
So, exactly. But I think that a lot of people don't understand that you really operate pretty independently.
Yes. Every U.S. Attorney's Office in the United States has a lot of leeway within their own district to make decisions about what cases to pursue, what initiatives to pursue. Of course, the Attorney General has priorities for the whole Department of Justice, and we take our lead from the Attorney General in all the U.S. Attorney's offices. But on a day-to-day basis, we have a lot of autonomy.
Let me ask you about some law enforcement issues in our state.
Sure.
We have seen a spike in crime, particularly in gun violence across our state, especially in our largest city. We're at a record number of gun incidents so far this year. What can you do to help?
Well, Stuart, that is our top priority right now. The uptick in violent crime across the state and in Chittenden County as well is right at the top of our list. It's also a top priority for the Attorney General nationwide. We are working extremely hard to address this issue. We are investigating and prosecuting more firearms cases than we have in the past. The prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office are working extremely hard to identify situations where our office can bring our resources to bear to have a positive community impact. This comes up in situations where people are possessing firearms illegally, purchasing firearms illegally, and unfortunately we've seen a rise in violence associated with drug trafficking. There's a couple of other things that I'd like to mention specifically on this topic, on the topic of the increase in violent crime and in Chittenden County as well. We have a prosecutor in our office who's responsible for what's called our Project Safe Neighborhood program. That program is focused on federal firearms laws. That prosecutor has been going around the state training both state and local law enforcement agents and working with the state's attorney's offices so that they better understand the firearms laws that we enforce, so that when they bring their cases and the prosecutions they bring will help us down the road if we prosecute the same individual federally. That comes to bear particularly when someone's possessing a firearm illegally, and the basis for that illegality is the fact that they have a state felony in their criminal record. Another thing that we're working on, and we're partnering with our federal law enforcement partners at Homeland Security Investigations, is a lot of investigation and work in the southwest part of the state, in Rutland and Bennington. HSI has agents that are embedded with the Bennington Police Department and the Rutland Police Department, focusing on those areas. There's been a significant gun violence associated with drug trafficking in those areas, and we're working very closely with HSI and those local law enforcement agencies down there. And last but certainly not least, in the Chittenden County area, just recently there's been an announcement spearheaded by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, and the Burlington Police Department, of a Chittenden County Gun Violence Task Force. That task force, which was announced earlier this week, brings together the resources of most, if not all, of the police departments and federal law enforcement agencies that operate in Chittenden County to respond to gun violence incidents, investigate those gun violence incidents, and then work to figure out with our office on the federal side and with the state's attorney's office in Chittenden County on the state side to figure out which avenue of prosecution is the best avenue for these gun violence incidents in Chittenden County. It's extremely important that we address these incidents. There has been an uptick, particularly in the Burlington area. You've probably heard the acting police chief talk about those numbers. They're staggering. 2022 has seen way too much gun violence, and our office is doing its part by participating in this newly formed task force and by prosecuting these cases every day.
Do you have an opinion about whether the short staffing at our law enforcement agencies is contributing in some way?
Stuart, I think that the rise in crime and the rise in violent crime is a multi-layered problem. I don't think we can point to one particular reason for why we're seeing these rises in crime, and particularly in violent crime. I think that there are issues related to the pandemic, there's issues related to social services and the needs of people in the community who then might turn to crime. And I do think that being in law enforcement right now is extremely difficult. These people, these brave folks run towards danger while we're sitting at home, and it's extremely important that we respect the work that they do. And I also think that having more cops on the beat, more people on patrol, does serve as a deterrent to crime. So I think it's complicated. I don't think there's one reason why we're seeing this uptick, but yes, I think that having a greater police presence helps. I also think that that the conversations around police reform are important and long overdue. I recognize that some communities don't always feel safe with the police, and I think those conversations and more community engagement needs to happen so that that law enforcement can be a positive influence for everyone in the community.
We're about to launch a regulated retail cannabis market in our state. Any concern about that?
Well, Vermont's not the first state
in
the country, nor in New England, to have retail cannabis become legal. I want to be clear that marijuana is still illegal as a federal matter, but as with all of the work that the U.S. Attorney's Office does and the Department of Justice does and other U.S. attorneys do, we work with limited resources. So every potential case that comes in the door, one of the factors that we have to think about is this case a good use of our resources? In the illegal narcotics area, Fentanyl and opiates are still at the top of the list. Unfortunately, that problem has not gone away. When we're considering where to spend our resources in prosecuting and investigating drug crimes, fentanyl is at the top of the list.
Let me ask you about safe injection sites. We kick this around every now and then in our state. Would you oppose the opening of maybe one safe injection site, a pilot project?
Stuart, safe injection sites or overdose prevention sites are a national issue. There's ongoing litigation in Philadelphia about overdose prevention sites. So I'm not going to get into my position one way or the other about overdose prevention sites. I can tell you that DOJ in DC and Washington has taken the position and is committed to evaluating safe injection sites. They are working with local authorities in certain places in the country to consider those sites, to consider what guardrails might be put in place as part of an overall harm reduction strategy.
We've heard about the situation at the southern border with Mexico, the unbelievable number of apprehensions, and that the government is shifting some border agents down south to help. Does that leave us exposed here? What are you seeing along our northern border with Canada with respect to drugs and human smuggling?
We have an AUSA in our office, an assistant U.S. attorney who is our point person for immigration issues. I talked to him about this yesterday. Vermont is part of what's called the Swanton sector. The Swanton sector stretches from Ogdensburg, New York, to Pittsford, New Hampshire. Vermont's in the middle there. In that whole sector, in the past year, Border Patrol data says that we've seen about a 5-fold increase in apprehension of undocumented individuals. In our office, we can attest to the fact that we've seen more smuggling incidents, human smuggling in particular. So there's no question that in the recent past, there's been an uptick in activity at the border, and our office is doing our best to address that.
Any comment about southern states shipping migrants to the north to quote unquote sanctuary jurisdictions?
Stuart, I've heard about that story. I've seen the articles and read the news just like you. I've also heard and been told that there's been calls for the Department of Justice and the Attorney General in particular to investigate the legality of those arrangements. Because of that, it's not appropriate for me to comment any further on that issue.
Finally, the Jay Peak Resort was just sold. The closing is imminent. Does this mean this EB-5 case, this EB-5 prosecution is essentially now over?
Here's what I can say. Our criminal docket in that case is closed. The 3 U.S. defendants in that case have been sentenced and are serving jail time. The 4th defendant from Korea, his case has been dismissed. This case and this investigation has been going on for a number of years. Dedicated AUSAs and law enforcement agents have poured over tremendous amounts of evidence and data in that investigation and in that case. They've made decisions. The U.S. Attorney's Office, before I've been in the leadership role, made decisions about criminal culpability in that matter, in that case. And at this point, that criminal case is closed.
Nicholas Karras, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.